So, good morning, everyone. We're about to start our second online fireside chat by UCAB, the Ukrainian Business Club. I'm inviting our panelists to show themselves on screen. Thank you. Thank you. This is our second event, since the first one took place approximately 3 weeks ago and was dedicated to the burning issues of Ukraine-EU agricultural trade. And today we are going to address another very interesting, even more provocative theme, myths about the Ukrainian agriculture. My name is Nazar Babitsky, and I'm Brussels representative of UCAB, of Ukrainian Agribusiness Club, a Ukrainian agricultural association representing farmers and agricultural producers of Ukraine here in Europe in Brussels. And when I was thinking about the topic of our discussion today, myths about Ukrainian agriculture, I couldn't help thinking about some kind of a medieval map of oceans. If you can all recall, in Middle Ages, when the cartographers and geographers didn't know much about the world around them, they tended to fill the blank spaces with very fascinating creatures, with dragons, with unicorns, etc., etc. So their fantasy were filling their lack of knowledge. And I am afraid that the Ukrainian agricultural sector continues to be a blank spot in the minds of Europeans, from society at large to farmers to politicians and the media. And unfortunately, this lack of knowledge breeds very strange creatures. It breeds myths. And I think, let's say, the agricultural sector, we at large, our friends, we have to deal with this. So I would like to introduce our panel for today. Today with us, we have Mr. Denis Bashlik, Deputy Minister of Agrarian Policy and Food of Ukraine, Olga Shevchenko, Deputy Chairman of State Service of Ukraine for Food Safety and Consumer Protection, Alex Lisitsa, President of UCAB, and Alexandra Avramenko, Chair of UCAB Committee for European Integration. Before we start our discussion about the 5 most common myths that we decided to have a look today, I would like to pass the floor for welcoming and kickoff discussion to Alex Lisitsa and ask Alex a very simple question. Why do we have to deal with myths about Ukrainian agriculture today? Alex.
Thank you, Nazar. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining our discussion today. And yeah, that's a good question, Nazar. So, I have an impression that over last months, Ukraine in general, but also the agriculture of Ukraine became a kind of scapegoat for the European farmers. Unfortunately, many people in Europe do not think so about the realistic picture of Ukrainian agriculture. They do not think and discuss with us about their problems we do face right now, their problems of the global markets. And unfortunately, many people in Europe also forgot that their global agriculture players have been changed over the last 30 years massively, and not anymore countries like France or Germany globally play a huge role on the market, but completely new players come, and that one of, unfortunately, is Russia, or, for example, also our friends from Argentina and Brazil, which never means, so like 30 years ago, they did not play a huge role on the global market. So right now they dominate some markets, and including products like corn, soybean, but also sugar, wheat. So that's a completely different picture. And that's probably a chance for European Union, but also for us to find a kind of compromise. How can we together with Europe become again the global player? And I think not to think about Ukraine as a whipping boy, but to think about Ukraine as a cooperative partner and partner for the future. And I think the idea of that meeting today is honestly to discuss about all the issues which probably people still don't know in European Union, unfortunately. But as we see the whole public discussions, especially in Poland, they are far away from their reality and from their fact check. That's the problem, exactly what we do observe right now.
Yes, thank you very much, Alex. Indeed. So now we are going to debunk, let's say, 5 most common myths that, for instance, we come across in media, on the slogans of protesters around Ukraine, and also perhaps sometimes in questions of politicians or foreign dignitaries that visit Ukraine and feel embarrassed, but still compelled to ask these questions to their Ukrainian colleagues. So the first question perhaps is the most relevant one. There is much talk in Europe and around the world that Ukraine not only has, let's say, enormous land area of arable land. For instance, one figure that Ukraine arable land is equal to 1/3 of total arable land of all Europe. But also this figure is compounded by myths that Ukrainian land, arable land, is a private property of a very few. I think the best answer to this question can be answered by Deputy Minister Denis Bashlik. Denis has been from the very early days of one of the let's say engines and facilitators of a land market reform in Ukraine. So he has a unique expertise to share with us what really happened, or at least what were the origins of the structure of ownership structure and relations between producers and local communities in Ukraine, in the rural communities, and how it develops further. So over to you, Denis. Can you please tell us a few words, at least a very introductory remarks about how the reform of land ownership of Ukraine went in a couple of last years, and what currently does the ownership of land works in practice in Ukraine? What were the key elements of land market reform that we have now as compared, for instance, with 10 years ago, or even with the beginning of independence of Ukraine? Denis, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Cesar. Actually, you mentioned very important myth that we had, not only in European market, but also domestic myth that the Ukrainian land is owned by few people, and sometimes these people are not from Ukraine, they're foreigners. This myth takes its roots from the start of the land reform. It started in Ukraine, unfortunately, 20 years ago, and only 3 years as we have the land market working. We had a lot of political struggles in this regards. We had to overcome a lot of myths. We had to overcome the main myth that if we open the land market, a lot of foreigners will come and buy out all the land. Right now, if we take the statistics for the last 2 years, we see that not more than 1% per year is being sold right now in Ukraine. But let me take a step back because I want to tell shortly what are the rules for the land market for today. We came to the second, we have two stage land market. We introduced 2-stage land market in Ukraine. First stage was only physical entities and up to 100 of hectares per one person. Right now, we have the second stage of the land market where the legal entities, but only with Ukrainian beneficiaries, came into play. Unfortunately, 2 or 3 years of land market working, it is working during the full-scale invasion, during the full-scale war. And we see that even after launching the land market for the legal entities, we don't have some, like boom of sale of the land. We see that the numbers are being almost the same as it was during the first year of land market launch. If we speak about figures, when the land reform started in Ukraine, the 27 million hectares of arable land has been disposed between 7 million of people. As a fact, we had 7 million of people who could not sell or buy private property. It was like frozen at all. It was like totally frozen the sector of economy. Right now, we see that it has been working. The price is as expected, is growing almost every year, and we see that a lot of new players are appearing on this market. But the best way to debunk this myth is to show real numbers. We have in Ukraine such a saying that there is a lie, there is a root lie, and there is statistics. So, but I want to show you not the statistic, I want to show you the real numbers. If I can share my screen right now. Yeah. Also, I want to say that last year we've launched the State Agrarian Registry. It is like the farmers registry that every European state has. And before launching that, we had the official statistic that we have only 45,000 of small farmers, which who cultivates a very, very small amount of land. I want to take a step back. The State Agrarian Registry has been launched within the project of the European Union, and it's not like our some know-how. It's totally within the standards, within the legislative framework of the EU. So right now we have 130,000 of farmers registered in SAR, and they representing 11 million of hectares of arable land. We do understand that it is not completed yet, because right now the registration in SAR is not obligatory. Farmers register if they want to take part in some programs. But if we take statistic rules, these 11 million of hectares, it's like a half of cultivated land right now, is being representative. If we look on the structure of SAR registries, we see that 67% are the households, 11% are small farmers, entrepreneurs, and 23% are legal entities. So here we can see and understand that the myth that the land is being cultivated by some only big legal entities is a real myth. If we see the structure of the land ownership that are registered in SAR, I want to emphasize that it is not statistic, it's real data. It's data from the real registry, which is registered by farmers by themselves and being checked within the official registers. You can see the amount of households who cultivates the area below 50 hectares is dominating between the SAR users. And you can see how the number of legal entities are being decreased within the cultivating more land. I think this is very representative within the myth that you mentioned, that the Ukrainian land is being cultivated only by big companies and only by few big companies which are beneficiated by foreigners. Here you can see the land bank structure, which is cultivated by legal entities, entrepreneurs, and households. We do understand that its number very differs, but it's rules of every agricultural market. We do understand that Ukrainian agriculture model differs from European, but anyway, we see that the every player has its own place on this market, and it's totally right now transparent according to the statistics of state data of State Agrarian Registry. So that's it. Thanks for time.
Thank you very much, Denis. Thank you very much. I think our audience needs also for a better understanding of how the land market reform and evolution came about. They need a little history lesson, and I hope you can provide this in just in a few sentences. Denis, I think how can you explain that Ukrainian, let's say, structure of Ukrainian land ownership is different, for instance, from one of Poland? What we know is that Poland land ownership is distributed in very widely in small, relatively small land plots among private private families or farmers that have been tilling the land for generations. Is it the same in Ukraine? And if not, what was the reason, let's say, from history, given, let's say, the period of time from Soviet times and until the independence? If you can give us just a few hints.
Yeah, okay. If we take the history lesson of the land reform, as I already mentioned, 27 million of hectares has been distributed between 7 million of people. This land was like the land of Soviet kolkhoz, like collective entities which worked on the land, and this land has been distributed between its workers. The average amount of the land plot was like 4 hectares. But if we take, for example, per person. But if we take, for example, eastern part of Ukraine, the average amount of the land plot was about 7 and 6 hectares. So we do understand, for example, if the family of 5-6 people who worked on this in this kolkhoz, they received the amount of land averagely about 25 hectares, which is twice more than average, for example, Polish household. So we do understand that the starting point of the land reform in Ukraine totally differs from the starting point, for example, from Poland model. So that's it.
Thank you. Thank you, Denis. Now we move to the second myth that is, let's say, dominated the headlines about the Ukrainian agriculture, that the Ukrainian agricultural sector is dominated by large-scale agricultural companies. Partially, this myth has been already addressed by Denis in his presentation, but I would like to ask my colleague Alexandra to give a little bit more of insights into the structure of Ukrainian agricultural sector today. Perhaps, can we start with a question, Alexandra? What's considered a small and medium-sized farm in Ukraine in terms of land area under cultivation? Again, I remind our audience that Ukraine has somehow, for better or for worse, quite a significant amount of land under cultivation. It's approximately 35 million hectares, and it is equal to 1/3 of all arable land in even Western Europe. Alexandra, over to you, please.
Nazar, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining our webinar today. So if we speak about, this is actually one of my favorite topics, speaking about the scale of agricultural sector in Ukraine and Europe, because what happens in Ukraine is ultimately starts to be enormous for European Union. For example, the average size of farmer in European Union is 17 hectares, while in Ukraine is approximately 50 hectares. And this is just one farmer. And at the same time, the scale of Ukrainian agricultural sector with its enormous fields and the huge number of arable land makes it even more in terms of understanding that scale in this place and ability to maximize efficiency actually plays a key role in Ukraine. If we speak about the real numbers, how it is divided in Ukraine, we say approximately up to 1,000 hectares is a small agricultural producer. From the size of 1,000 hectares till 5, sometimes 10,000 hectares. So you already see we have this gap between 5 and 10,000 hectares. We say those are considered to be medium producers, and up to 10,000 hectares, those are big agricultural companies. If you don't mind, I also would like to share my screen.
Please, go ahead.
And would add something. So first and foremost, I'd like to add something to what Denis said previously. What is important in terms of understanding the development of land market in Ukraine? In Europe, land was always an asset, and it belonged to someone. In Ukraine, land became an asset and was already given to someone, so someone can actually own this land when only the Soviet Union collapsed. Therefore, the land market in Ukraine is very, very young. Therefore, we have this just developing process, and most of the land is not sold but leased right now. This is very important to understand. So this is the structure also what Denis said, but this is the pre-war, this is 2021. But what most important is that what Denis told, the amount of big companies in terms of ownership and also in terms of working on the land bank is very small in Ukraine. If we speak about only the big companies, right, those who are perceived to be agricultural holdings and those very terrifying words in European Union. In Ukraine, we have 20 big agricultural companies. Those are the biggest. We definitely have some more below the level of 71,000 hectares, but those are the biggest, top 20. What it is important to say that those companies, they work only on the 10% of Ukrainian arable land. So in total, they have approximately 3.1 million hectares in operation. Those companies are all, not always, but sometimes they're perceived to be only international and not paying taxes in Ukraine. But it is important to say that in 2022, these top 20 companies paid almost $1 billion US, which is quite big number, and agricultural companies are actually assumed to be one of the biggest taxpayers in Ukraine, especially in 2023. What is also important to understand that, again, the land on which the agricultural companies, especially big one, it is leased. Why? Because we are currently on the second stage of the land reform, under which, Denis, please correct me if I'm wrong, we have only the right to sell up to 10,000 hectares per one legal unit. Thank you very much. And that can be only Ukrainian registered entity. So currently, those companies that have at least some share of ownership that belongs to foreigners, or they're listed on international markets, they have not get this right to buy land. Why? Because that would be in the third stage of land reform. Only after Ukraine will have the referendum. And referendum in our case can happen only when the war finishes. So therefore, today we have the land market of Ukraine, which can sell or buy the land only up to 10,000 hectares and can only be sold or bought only by Ukrainian.
Thank you, Alexander. I think there is one thing that we need to clarify for our audience. Perhaps it was slipped out of the attention. Do these agricultural companies actually own land in Ukraine, or is it the individual plot holders? Can you explain?
Okay, so who owns the land right now?
Yes, who owns the land in Ukraine when we look at this and this charts? That's important.
Mostly those are physical people. So for example, myself, I have some 3 hectares up north in Ukraine, in Zhytomyr region, which is not that far from Kiev. And I personally lease the land. Because why? Because there is one big field up to 20 hectares or 50 hectares, out of which my 3 small hectares are somewhere in the middle of the field. And for me, it is not that comfortable, right? And would be that not much efficient to work on those 3 hectares, which are in the middle of the field. So therefore, in Ukraine, it is common that people lease their land to entities who can operate on bigger amount of land. So therefore, for example, the field is 50 hectares. We could have like 20 people who own this 50 hectares in total. They lease this land to one farmer who can operate on these 50 hectares. This is most common situation in Ukraine. But what is also important to understand that right now we are also selling land, and entities finally got the right to buy. Denis, I give that to you because you are more topic.
Please, thanks a lot. I just want to provide you two numbers for 3 years of the land, the possibility to sell and buy land. Almost 300,000 of hectares has been bought by private entities. And if we speak about legal entities, only 9,000 of hectares has been bought by legal entities. So you can compare this amount. Thank you.
Thank
So
you.
a quick question, colleagues, in fact, sorry for interrupting you, Alexandra. So do we understand correctly that those, let's say, people living in rural communities, the actual owners of the land plots, what is their relationship between them and those who cultivate the land? Is it a relationship of rent or anything else? If you can be a little bit more clear.
Okay, so these relationships are official. Let's start from that point. Or at least they're supposed to be official. You can rent agricultural producer can rent the land from the landowner, as it how it works with me. So I have a complete legal document which says that I am, as an owner of the land, give a right to work on this land for the next 10 years. This is an average number of years that that agricultural producers can rent the land. Under this contract, I receive the rent payments, from which I pay also taxes, but also the company who rents my land also pay taxes. So basically, if everything is done in official way, you have a complete transparent system in which landowners have a registered relationship with the farmers, and both sides are responsible and paying taxes for the budget.
Do we know how important is that these rent payments for the income of people living in rural communities? Do we know, for instance, how much can be the average payment, release payment to an individual landowner?
Definitely. So it is very important especially for people that live in rural areas, because in Ukraine, rural areas are still developing. It's not like we're in European Union where we have rural development strategy. It is something that we try to figure out on our way. People who live in rural areas, those are mostly elderly people, and they get only pensions right now, right? Or they have also some small production, like household production, basically. So the rent payment that they receive, they sometimes can be very much important part of their revenues, let's say. So for example, the rent could come up to 200, 300 US dollars per year.
It's a significant amount in terms of rural incomes, isn't it?
It is, and especially in terms of wartime, unfortunately, those are some additional revenues that could support livelihood of those people in rural areas where there's not much work left. And what it is important to say that these people that live in rural areas, they not just lease the land to farmers, but they also work with these farmers as an employees. And also agricultural companies and producers, they definitely provide some social support for the rural areas. So I mean, there is some there is a significant level of support from agricultural producers to people who live in rural areas, both in terms of rent payment, in terms of providing social support, and in terms of actually providing working places.
Thank you, Alexandra. And just by the way, I wonder, also for the better understanding of our audience, I wonder what is the average level of government agricultural subsidies that can be made available to farmers if one compares, of course, with the subsidies received by European farmers back in the EU. My question is to Denis. I don't ask you, Denis, of course, to recall the figures in wartime, but I think in 2021, the last peaceful year that we had, that was probably the most transparent and stable year for the government to budgetize and to distribute agricultural support to farmers. Can you recall any figures that usually have been available to Ukrainian agricultural producers, at least before the war started?
Actually, let me start from the support that we provide during the war, because the state support shifted from supporting medium and big one to the small one during the war. Right now, we have only 2 state programs that are available for small and medium farmers. First, it's support of small farmers per hectare, stable support per hectare and per 1 cow. It is not as big as in Europe. It's about 100 euros per hectare for farmers who cultivate up to 100 of hectares for small farmers in the framework of Ukraine policy, or 200 euros per 1 cow if you have up to 120 cows. That's what we have right now. Also, we have support for introducing irrigation systems, but it's like compensation of 40% of these irrigation systems for small and medium farmers again. If we speak about all other support, we right now and before the war, we have the support within the subsidies for credits, the state program 579, which is mostly being used by medium and big farmers. It's like subsidizing the credits for the revolving funds.
Thank you, Denis. I think I'm not going to compare these figures with the subsidies that are usually received by European farmers in the EU, especially in the course of the last 2 years. But I think the audience will make comparison and conclusions for themselves. Just a few household rules for our viewers. We are inviting you to put your questions in the Q&A chat box of this webinar, and then we will invite our panelists to answer them in each and every turn once the discussion is over. Now we move to the next, let's say, common myth that our agriculture producers face in the dialogue with the European peers and European media, namely that Ukrainian agriculture products are imported into the EU despite they are not compliant with the EU food safety and sustainability regulations. Luckily, we have an excellent expert in this area, Olga Shevchenko, Deputy Head of State the Food Safety Service of Ukraine. Question to Olga: is that can you explain our viewers? Is it that simple for Ukraine, for instance, to allow to export poultry exports to the EU? Poultry is considered one of the sensitive products by the European farmers, and there are a lot of charges against Ukrainian producers that Ukrainian poultry and poultry meat is exported regardless of whether producers adhere to European standards on food safety, animal welfare, etc., etc. Is it all that simple? If you can give us a few, let's say, a few brushing remarks, Olga. Thank you.
Thank you, Nazar, for the question, and good day, ladies and gentlemen. Before I will answer this question, as a practical veterinarian, as a technician in SPS, I'm still a little bit shocked why this question still arises a myth. Of course, the procedures when we speak about the trade in commodities, about the export, especially of animal origin like poultry, dairy, or any other, there is a really huge procedure which protect the level of human health. This is food safety. In any import requirements, first, always the health of the people of the population. What's about the procedures then you export into European Union? I will try to briefly explain the stages, and then we come back to your question. Because we have a great experience in Ukraine in exporting agriculture products. And I can't say it's easy, because the market access, it's always about a really big number of procedures. It's about the correspondence of legislation. We speak about the food safety parameters, standards, which checked by officials of European Commission, not only in paper as a procedures or in legislation, they check it in practice. The way how we receive the right of export of animal origin products, agriculture products to European market, they take the level of physical checks by European Commission of each system in Ukraine in place, not in paper, not in speaking. It's not only the trust of the word, it's physical check of establishments, of laboratories in Ukraine, how we conduct the testing, how we do the control, how our officials know the legislation, how they implement the legislation. It's a really big and comprehensive system of the state control, which we speak today about. It's physical checks. It's only one of the stages of receiving the market access. When Ukraine received the market access of poultry, it took for almost 5 years of month-to-month activities in speaking with European Commission, providing materials. Dairy took 7. It's not a fast procedure, as you can see. And this not that when we're receiving the right of exports, everything stops. No, this is ongoing system. First of all, European Commissions do the checks, periodical checks of Ukrainian system, of any third system in the country. It's a organized, official food safety control system. Plus, of course, when we're speaking about the practical trade, day-to-day trade that is coming today, that's a risk-oriented checks at the border. What they include? Tests, they include checks of procedures, they check the compliance. So that's, you see that the process is really comprehensive, and to receive the right of export for Ukraine of any products, it's a comprehensive and big checks of each type of Ukrainian control system. So that's why I'm still curious why this myth is still appears, because when you have a big, small, and medium levels of checking of the products which imported from Ukraine to European market, you see that these products under permanent control of Ukraine, of European member countries where the products entering. When we speak about poultry or any other products, this is still a question. Why you asking about the non-compliance if only products, we sign in official documents, we provide our state guarantees that the products covered, you can open the certificate which comes together with the products. What we sign in? We do testing, we check the test, we have the laboratory results, we have the proofs. Each consignment must be proved. This is the system how organized. So I don't believe still that the question of the products non-compliant can be passed to European markets. Frankly speaking, being a European official, I will be really in a shame, because this is mean that nobody trusts the European system.
Thank you, Olga.
Thank you.
But there are, for instance, charges that it's all decided in Brussels or between Brussels and Ukraine, and the member states, especially those bordering Ukraine, have no say and no control over the quality of products, of agricultural products entering Ukraine. Is this true? For instance, can you explain whether the member states' veterinary officials can really exercise control over the quality and food safety of products coming from Ukraine?
It's quite easy. It's the national regulation of European legislation. Each member state had their own veterinary food safety service. They are the entry point to European market. They do the checks at border inspection post when the products entering. They do the checks on the market in retail. It's a risk-oriented approach. Then they check in the system. Of course, they do this testing. They have the rights. They have the possibilities to move under European legislation if they find non-compliance. And of course, I can't say that anywhere in the world there is existing the system. There is not can be identified any non-compliance. It's the system. It's a manufacturers of machines, on the human factors, but the member states do the control under umbrella of European Commission. European Commission only have the establishment of the procedures. They do the checks of member states, including how they do the control at the border of imported products. It's one of SPS. It's one of the most organized comprehensive and really complicated systems due to the number of checks, rechecks, verification, and proven. It's not possible all control in the members, in the inspectors, in veterinarians in each member state of European Union. It's not about the Brussels only.
Thank you, Olga. And I would like also to address one a little bit more technical aspect, but I think it would be also interesting for our audience. We also know, for instance, that when animal diseases break out across Europe, and usually animal diseases, they do not recognize borders. They move across borders and they affect wild populations, so for instance, wild birds, and they jump to poultry, to other domesticated species, and eventually there is a huge risk of contamination by these diseases of meat that is eventually processed and put on more supermarket shelves. How does Ukraine and EU cooperate to address this threat? Is this threat real, or it is being taken care of? And how Ukraine is responsible for taking its own fair share of the burden?
Thank you. And it is one of my favorite questions, actually, and I explain why. Because when we're speaking about the animal health, I would like to underline, they do not respect the borders. And the main task of us as veterinarians in Ukraine, in European Union, in each member country, to avoid the spreading of disease, because it's about harvesting of animals, it's about the food producing. In case of having the confirmation of any diseases, avian, cattle, doesn't matter, if they influence on the trade, our main task as a competent authority, first to stop the trade. First, we stop the trade by ourselves. We do
So
the
the Ukraine
necessary
takes the
investigation.
initiative itself to stop the trade before
It's a
investigating and
procedure.
eradicating the disease, correct?
It's a really technical question. I will try to easily explain it, because it's not only it's about the global trust. This is the main. We need to stop if they have the confirmation of the any animal health disease. First, we stop the trade, do the necessary measures. If the influence, of course, on the trade, on the spreading of disease, do the necessary measures, and then if we check that this is safe or under the international or European or Ukrainian legislation, we renew the trade. There is still the diseases which are not influenced on the trade. In this case, it doesn't matter that nobody cooperates. If even there is diseases not influenced on the trade, they are local, we still have the notification. We use the one system with European Union. We use exactly the European system union for notification of diseases. And it's a transparency. It's about the procedures of transparency. You see in the system all our notification. You see it in a global system. Each country in the world can see it. It's about not only procedures, it's about the trust that in case of emergency, the country will do the measures which will help to avoid the influence on the animal health of status of the neighboring countries.
Thank you very much, Olga. And I remind our audience that if you have additional questions into these fairly technical aspects that we discussed today, feel free to ask your questions in the appropriate chat window of our webinar. And now we move perhaps to the last but the most painful myth that is unfortunately driving wedge between Ukrainian and European farmers, specifically that Ukrainian agriculture imports drive EU farmers out of business. Let's look at the Polish case in 2022-2023, when the EU decision to open solidarity lines for Ukrainian agricultural exports to compensate for the blockade by the Russian military of Black Sea ports was led to considerable increase of Ukrainian agricultural imports in transit to Europe through Europe, and then we saw an enormous backlash from Polish farmers claiming that Ukrainian import was primarily responsible for low prices and for the lack of opportunities for Polish farmers to sell their own produce. I would like to ask this question to Alexandra Avramenko. Alexandra, Let's start from the very beginning. When we look at the 2022, when the decision was first taken to open the solidarity lanes, can we have a very brief look at the prices situation in Poland and in the EU? Did Ukrainian cereal imports really kept prices low in Poland, or at least for cereals? What can you say?
Nazar, that's quite comprehensive question, because if you want to start from the very beginning, so we need to start from the invasion day, basically. If you don't mind, again, I'll share my screen. We have selected few products that we would like to speak about. So this is, yep, this is going to be the first one, the soft wheat. Besides, you have a table with the market years and with the balance. Basically, this one big table, this is the balance sheet of the European Union with its export, import, consumption, and in the end, the import of Ukrainian products and its share in import and consumption. Besides it, below you have the chart of the average prices in the EU for wheat. So if you definitely want to start from the very beginning, so let's start from basically the invasion date. So here you see the steep increase in price from basically 277 euros per ton to 390. And that was not the last price, not the peakest price, let's call it that way. Why? Because this increase in the price was connected to the uncertainty and the lack of predictability whether Ukrainian products will be able to leave the Ukrainian land, let's call it that way, Ukrainian territory, and be exported to third countries. The peakest moment, the highest moment was in May, if I'm not mistaken, May 2022. That was the month when the Food and Agriculture Organization index price was the highest. Why? Because that was the time when products should have already been exported. The new harvest is on the way. Ukraine is still lack of capacity to export on the normal pace. As a reminder, Odessa ports are blocked at that time. Solidarity lanes are in place, but their capacity is very low. Danube ports are also quite low. This all drew prices to increase on the world scale level, not just in Europe. Just as a reminder, Ukraine being blocked, being unable to export, have a surplus of product inside of the market means it drives the price on product in Ukraine down. But the rest of the world is expecting how it's going to end, because the absence of Ukrainian products on the external and the world market definitely creates a pressure on customers, but gives more benefits basically for producers from all other places. This situation is approximately the same, not just for wheat, but also for corn and for all the other cereals that Ukraine produces and export. You see that there is a huge increase for all the products. So for example, we also have poultry. Poultry reacted also the same. Why? Because the production of poultry also depends on the availability of the cereals on the world market. So if we speak in general, whether Ukrainian products have influenced the price on the market, so first and foremost, yes. At some point, the absence of availability of Ukrainian products on the world market led to increase in the cereals prices on basically all the markets and for all producers that can actually produce those products. So for some period of time, all the countries, Poland, Hungary, Slovakia, Romania, Bulgaria, and their producers who produce cereals that Ukraine also produced, they definitely benefited for some time that Ukraine is not capable or does not have capacity to export the normal amount of product abroad. However, since the solidarity lane started to work, since the Black Sea ports were deblocked, And for the first time, there was the Black Sea Grain Initiative. Then, with the help of Ukrainian defense, we deblocked Ukrainian seaports. All these efforts combined, this led to the fact that world prices started to decrease. And you can see it on the chart that the price not being peak. Okay, this is poultry still. So here, for example, in corn, since the peak moment, then we go down. Down is the June 2022. This is the time when the Black Sea Grain Initiative was put in place. Then we have problems with the work of the Black Sea Grain Initiative, but eventually with the open of Danube reports, and also with the proper work of solidarity lanes, and also with the development of the Constanta export route, and also given that the other countries also produce cereals, the price started to decrease. This is average situation for grains, oil seeds, you name it. So this is in a nutshell. But there is also the situation that, for example, our Polish colleagues claim that Ukrainian prices led to the availability of Ukrainian grain on Polish market led to decrease on the prices on the Polish market. But in that case, we say that it is not just Ukraine, it is the world price that is falling down, and the whole market is replying to that, and Polish market cannot be exception in this case. So it is a game where the world players are playing at the same level, and one cannot be blamed that the whole market feels the same.
Mhm. Thank you very much, Alexandra. I remind our audience that the recording of this webinar will be available later on YouTube, and also the presentations provided by our experts, by our panelists, will also be available online. We are quickly moving to the end of our webinar, and now I would like to switch to answering questions to our audience. I think we have a few very interesting and relevant questions coming from our viewers. And I would start also again from the food safety. Specifically, there are very relevant questions from viewers regarding as the contrast between food safety requirements that Ukraine has to comply with in order to qualify for exports to EU markets, but also animal welfare and environmental standards. Perhaps, Olga, how can you answer these questions? Specifically, where Ukraine fares in terms of aligning itself with the EU rulebook, with the EU legislation on animal welfare? What are our shortcomings, where we stand, and what are our prospects in terms of legislative approximation? Thank you.
Thank you, Nazar. Frankly speaking, I have already answered in the chat, but I will briefly explain. There is a lot of myths about animal welfare, but first let's speak about the point I started before. When we assess in the export of concrete commodity to European market, we assessed in all standards. We speak about the exporters. So when you exporting, all the exporters listed in the list for export at the website of DG Santé, it's less than 400 food producer, if not so much. They comply all relevant standards, included animal health, food safety, and welfare. If we're speaking about the global approach in Ukraine at the national level, of course, the process of harmonization requires the full harmonization for animal welfare, not only for exporters, but also for the producers, local producers, small producers, medium, who not exported. It's the investments, it's the procedures, and it's the change of the technologies. We still need the transitional period for implemented to all the nationals. Doesn't matter if they big or not, if they exported or not. However, the main legislation of animal welfare already have been adapted with a transitional period, and it's under the screening project will be the part under when we will have the accession assessment. So when we're speaking about this myth, one of the myths that man use, exporters comply the standards. national producers will be obliged to comply with the standards, then the legal acts will be enforced due to the transitional periods, if I'm not mistaken, in 25 and 26. But it's, of course, you can see it into the SPS strategy, all the relevant dates for deadlines for the animal welfare. Thank you, Nazar.
Thank you, Olga. Then we have another, let's say, interesting, even a controversial question from an audience about that Ukrainian agriculture markets of processed products are highly monopolized. One of our readers or viewers is claiming that for sunflower oil, sugar, eggs, and poultry meat, there is a huge level of monopolization of production. Colleagues, do we agree with this statement? What we can answer to our audience in this respect? Who would like to take the floor?
I can start to
Please,
answer
Alexandra.
the question.
You are our roundabout, let's say, all-rounded expert on this.
Oh, I am. What I can start to answer that Ukrainian agricultural sector has been developing over the last 20 years. And the circumstances under which it is developed, or it has been developing, are different from those that are in the European Union. That's one thing. And in that case, it is quite difficult to compare Ukrainian agricultural producers and also processors with the Europeans, because the circumstance and the scale and everything is different. That's one thing. The second thing is that highly monopolized market would definitely get some extra attention from both European and Ukrainian authorities. And I don't think this is a very naive statement that nothing has done, at least from my side, because I can say that at least I have seen the amount of exporters of sugar from Ukraine, and the amount of them is very big. And also in terms of poultry producers, Olga, please tell me, please correct me if I'm wrong. I think we have up to 10 companies that are registered to export from Ukraine to the EU. And it's not that, so I mean, those are just companies that can export to the EU, besides those companies that can actually work in Ukraine and produce in Ukraine. So in that case, I don't think it is fair to say that we are highly monopolized. But what I can definitely say is that Ukrainian agricultural sector is big, and if some investors from abroad would like to come, they would definitely find a niche to work, to develop, and then also to export from Ukraine to third markets, because the potential in developing of agricultural sector and processing in Ukraine is enormous.
Thank you very much, Alexandra. We have another very interesting
Probably just,
question.
Nazar, I'm sorry,
Please.
just can I add a few words about that? I think I'm completely agree with those words what Alexandra said, because if you look on the processing industry, it doesn't matter where, it's a high level of concentration. Even the countries like Poland, for example, or Germany, look on the market of sugar. How many players on the sugar market do we have in Germany? Just few. The same story also with chicken, et cetera, et cetera. So that means it's nothing special in Ukraine. In a processed market of agriculture products, is a high concentration every one country. And look, please, on the statistics, and you will be surprised how concentrated is the market in some countries of European Union, especially on animal production. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alex. We have another question from the audience about the quality and value of agricultural arable lands in Ukraine. And if I'm not mistaken, reading the question in comparison probably with Europe. Let me perhaps decipher this question in the following way. Probably our viewer is asking about whether the quality of arable land in Ukraine has increased or decreased, also maybe in the context of the war, perhaps depending on the region, and also whether it affects the value of land plots depending on the region and depending how the quality of the land. I wonder whether Maybe perhaps Denis or maybe Alexander would want to answer this question.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I can ask. I can
Please.
answer. If we speak, let's divide this question into two parts. First, it's value of agri-land. It is totally connected with the quality because the minimum price of the land is connected with normative value of the land, and the normative value is connected with the quality of the land. So we do understand that the climate is changing. We do understand that everything is changing, and the price is changing in this regards. But if we speak about the land market stimulates not only the price of the land, it also stimulates the quality of soils, because if you have your land in property, it is not leased, sure, you will care about it a little bit more than you would care if it is leased. If you don't, for example, if you're not sure that after a year of using this land, the landowner will continue the lease agreement with you. If we speak about the quality and in regards of the war, and it is also connected with the quality of Ukraine's grain in the context of European market, I would like to provide you some small statistics. Right now, we are use 2 times less fertilizers and agrochemicals per hectare than in the EU. And during the war, the use of fertilizers decreased by 45%. And if we speak about plant protection products, it is 25% less. So we do understand that the direct impact of the decreasement, unfortunately, due to the conditions of war, positively influences and impacts the quality of soils. But on the other hand, we have contaminated, potentially contaminated lands with mines and so on among the front line. We do understand that this percent right now it's very small, but some of these lands should be conservated for some years because of the contamination by the mines. So that's it.
Thank you very much. Does anyone want to add something to this question? Maybe
Yeah, Nazar,
Alexander
I'd
or-
like to. Yeah, I have
Please
something.
do.
So the question of land usage and its quality and the usage of fertilizers and crop protection, it is highly connected to the question of the Green Deal, which is on one of the top questions right now in Europe, in the European Union and among the European farmers. And one of the claims that we hear to Ukraine is also that we do not follow the standards. Ukrainian agricultural sector does not follow the standards and does not have the same requirements as, for example, European farmers have. But what Denis started to say that, so the level of usage of fertilizers and crop protection products in Ukraine, even before war, was lower than European Union. That's one thing. The second thing that I'm trying to evolve your answer, Denis. Everything was correct. I'm trying to get a bit of a more of context. Why the level of usage of crop protection products and fertilizers during the war decreased? Because the economic situation of Ukrainian agricultural producers is difficult. Therefore, the technology of production is changing. Therefore, there is a cost reduction in place. Why? Because there is not enough liquidity and because Ukrainian agricultural producers face losses for the 3rd year in a row. Therefore, Ukrainian agricultural sector becomes even more greener than European ones. How would you like it? But the circumstances also, what Denis said, that part of Ukrainian land is mined, contaminated, right? And also it's the part in the frontline areas, and it cannot be used, cannot be sold, which makes it approximately 30% of Ukrainian land not being used in agricultural production. And you guess what? There is a problem right now in the European Union that European farmers are faced to reduce their arable land and put it aside also in approximately 30%. So, I mean, aren't we almost at the same level in terms of Green Deal with you? I mean, with the European producers. So the circumstances of what is happening are terrifying. But I mean, what already is happening is that Ukrainian agricultural sector is already greener than European ones. That this needs to be faced. And meanwhile, Ukrainian agricultural producers do not get that level of support as European ones. So please keep in mind and add to that some kind of solidarity to Ukrainian farmers, because currently we are facing the lack of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexander. I think we found already the next topic for our webinar in a couple of weeks, and I appreciate for your creativity, Alexander, here. And now, colleagues, I have the very last question, which we received in writing the day before, and unfortunately, I think after that we have to conclude because the time is almost up. About the genetically modified organisms, one of the viewers is asking us, what is the current Ukrainian policy on GMOs, on genetically modified plants and organisms? How is it aligned with the European approach, and whether there have been any changes in the context of the war? I wonder, perhaps maybe Olga Shevchenko, maybe Denis Pashlik, as representatives, government officials, would like to enlighten us in this respect. I remind again, the government policy with regards to the use and proliferation of genetically modified organisms in arable and in cultivable land. Perhaps Olga or Denis?
Probably I can share some information in general. When we're speaking about the legislation of GMO in Ukraine, and it's also have the specific law which regulates the GMO not use in. However, when we speak about the procedures and the compliance with European regulation, we are in the process of the implementation of this law, where the European system of the GMO control are implemented in open systems and closed systems. As an implementator body, what can I say? Because we in accordance with the new law, which will be enforced, will be the body doing the testing of the compliance. We have the monitoring plan. We have the procedures where we do the risk-based checks of the products, depending, of course, on the requirements when we export in products or produce products, including GMO in crops, in products. And it's the part of the system of monitoring, confirming the absence, confirming the compliance of the products with the standards. And it's also one of the most probably sensitive questions that is decided over the years. Of course, I'm only saying as an implementator of the standards who doing the testing. Maybe Denis have any other points to add from the ministry. Thank you.
And thanks, Olga. Actually, right now I don't have any points to add. The GMO right now is one of the most sensitive questions, and we do understand we need to face EU regulation, and we started for the monitoring, as you already mentioned. So we are in process.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Yes, please go ahead, Alexandra.
Nothing very special, but just that Ukraine is on the way of implementing all, because I see the questions regarding the fertilizers and stuff. Ukraine is on the process of implementation of all the norms that are already in the European Union. Some of them has already been put in place because we have this association agreement since 2014. And especially in agricultural sector, because the business was very much focused on working with the European Union. So while we are putting all of this slowly, piece by piece, but don't think that we are that far from European Union. It's just that sometimes European legislation updates faster than we can actually implement the new one.
Thank you, Alexandra. I must apologize before our audience, but unfortunately our time is up. I see that we have very much ignited the interest, at least in the next potential topic of our webinar, Ukraine and the European Green Deal. Who is greener, Europe or Ukraine, especially as far as the crop protection products is concerned. So it's very good. I think we got an interest from our audience in our webinar. So On behalf of the audience, I would like to thank our panelists for their time, for their very interesting and animating answers. And I do invite everyone to follow UCAB website, follow our activity on social media. And when we announce the date of our next online fireside chat about Ukrainian agriculture sector. Thank you very much.